Damn. Gamers. Today we're gonna do similar to what I did with the when to get economic upgrades, which economic upgrades to prioritize. Today we're gonna be doing which military upgrades to prioritize. That means we're gonna cover blacksmith upgrades, like the veteran upgrades, university upgrades, and some specific upgrades from every civilization. With that being said, let's start with the most basic one. How many blacksmiths should I make? Well, you should always make one, possibly two with Delhi in Feudal, and then you slowly get upgrades depending what unit comp you're going for. If you for some reason you skipped upgrades and then you have a lot of economy, then you can get two blacksmiths at the same time in castle. Well, if you have no blacksmiths all the way to Imperial, you're playing it very wrong. So the only way I could see like maybe skipping blacksmith and then going double is if you're like rushing castle with HRE or something, or maybe you're 2TC China and you're going castle immediately, maybe then double blacksmith. But usually one blacksmith is all you need. Just get your upgrades, you know, regularly, right? Don't skip on them. Like, don't build blacksmith, build nothing, and then go castle or something like that. So how many blacksmiths? One. If Delhi, you can go two, but I still go one with Delhi because, yeah. And then later on in, like, basically with Delhi I go one until castle, and then in castle I add the second blacksmith because the upgrades are researched a lot slower. So which upgrades to prioritize in feudal age in blacksmith specifically? So we're gonna open blacksmith right here. Which upgrades do you prioritize? So you do not have military academy upgrade, you have siege engineering, iron onrush, feudal leatherwork, steel arrow, and boomery, aka bloomery. So when do you get these upgrades and which ones do you prioritize? Now there's no rule for these. This is very dependent on what civ you're playing, what unit comp you're going for, and what the opponent is doing. So for example, if you are playing against French, do you need to get, let's say French is only making knights, do you need to get +1 ranged armor if they have no archers, right? You don't need to. So it's very dependent on what the opponent is going for. Now, one of the potentially worst, well, not potentially, but the worst upgrade in this is fitted leatherwork, which increases the melee armor of all non-siege units by 1. The only civ that I would say this is worth getting against is against HRE, but like knights do so much damage that getting 1 armor will not really change much to damage taken. Same thing if you are playing knights, and I'm talking knights specifically, so like Rus knights or French knights in feudal, getting bloomery will not give you that much. Why? Because in fighting against the other units specifically. Why? Because knight does so much damage that adding a +1 onto it doesn't change too much in the way that units interact, and it's not like you're gonna take 1 less shot to kill a spearman if you have +1. So this is not an upgrade you want to rush or prioritize. Bloomery general works great with men-at-arms, for example, and fitted leatherwork works great against men-at-arms, against horsemen. So usually against units that shoot or that attack really fast, the melee units, fitted leatherwork is great against, but units with high damage, fitted leatherwork is not good against. You can even skip it. Same thing, bloomery is not good on knights, but it is very good on units like horsemen and or spearmen too. It's pretty decent, but it's the best on men-at-arms because men-at-arms have low attack damage. So you get, basically the way it works is percentage wise on the damage increase, it's a lot higher than if you get this damage upgrade on a knight because the knights do more damage. Now that I've explained melee upgrades, so when do you get them? Well, if you're playing like HRE and you're going horseman, spearman in feudal, or horseman, man-at-arm, or man-at-arm, spearman, bloomery is worth to get because you're making double melee units or triple melee units, so you will get your value. If you are playing against HRE, like I said, you can get fitted leatherwork for +1 melee armor, but in general, these are not that important. Not that important. The most important upgrades in feudal age are steel arrow and under iron mash. Why is that? Because archers, I actually don't know how much damage they do in Feudal. Is it 5? I think it's 5, right? So if you get +1 armor, you can see how reducing the damage from 5 to 4 is a big difference than if you, reduce the damage from 20 to 19. Longbows do more damage, but it doesn't matter. Getting Iron Undermash if your opponent has archers, or getting +1 attack if you have archers, are the main upgrades you should be focusing on. So if you're playing against an opponent like English, the first upgrade you should get is Iron Undermash, because most of their army will be containing longbows, so getting +1 armor will be the most valuable. Another thing, if you're playing, for example, French, the first upgrade is not to get +1 steel arrow. The first upgrade as French, you want to get Iron Undermash against any civ, because you will be raiding with knights and the TC will be shooting at you here and there. So getting Iron Undermash first will give you the most value. And this is what I mentioned, you kind of have to figure out by yourself what civ you're playing against, and so on and so forth. Clearly, if you're making no ranged units, do not get Steeled Arrow. You don't need it, like if you're going no archers. But if you are going archers, whether it's Horseman Archer, Knight's Archer, Spearman Archer, getting Steeled Arrow is extremely, extremely important, because your damage then goes from 5 to 6. And it's a huge damage boost on your units. If you're trying to play a civ, like, let's say, French versus HRE, potentially, you could still get Iron Undermash, even though they're not making ranged units, let's say. You still want to get it for those dives under TC, but maybe you would prioritize Steeled Arrow first to get archer damage against Spearmen. So, in general, you kind of have to figure that out. If opponent is making archers, get Iron Undermash first. If you're focusing on a lot of archers, make sure to get Steeled Arrow as well. When to get Siege Engineering? One mistake that I see lower league players do is they get like +1 arrow damage or +1 arrow armor. They get Siege Engineering immediately. You should not be getting Siege Engineering before like 8 minutes into the game at least, because if you get Siege Engineering first or second at like 5 or 6 minutes, you will have to massively stop unit production in order to get a ram out. And if you don't have enough units, you can't protect your ram, so what's the point of making a ram? I've seen this so many times where people make ram with like 4 units, they push on their TC and the villagers burn it in 3 seconds, and then they're like, okay, I'll make another ram, and then make another ram, and then the ram gets killed. So you need a big army to be able to push with Siege Engineering. Siege Engineering is something to finish the games, to finish your opponent, not to put pressure on your opponent. You put pressure with your units. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, figure it out. Like try to use your, like when you're entering a match, if you're playing against English, be like, okay, if Iron Undermash first, then I'll get Steeled Arrow because I want to make archers to kill their spears, or something like that. But I would also suggest, once you heard all this, also when you watch like streams and stuff, just pay attention to what streamers are doing, and you're kind of gonna be able to connect all the dots, if you will. Once you learn this, you don't really think about it after. It just kind of comes natural. Now, the interesting part is here, right here. And those are castle upgrades. Now, which upgrades to prioritize in castle? Do you get unit upgrades, or do you get level 2 blacksmith upgrades? So when I say unit upgrades, I mean when you age up to castle. This is a question I get on my stream very often. So let's say you were going for spearmen and men-at-arms in feudal, and now you have teched up in your castle. What do you get first? Do you get castle men-at-arm upgrade? Do you get castle spearman upgrade? Do you get castle longbow upgrade? Or do you get level 2 blacksmith upgrades first? Alright, well, there's a very simple answer for this. And the answer is, you always get the veteran upgrades first, because they give you way more stats. These ones just give you +1 damage, +1 armor, right? The veteran upgrades for some units gives them extra armor, gives them extra health, and gives them extra damage. Some units also get unique bonuses like Malian scouts, where they get like 10 bonus damage versus ranged units and stuff like that. So getting veteran upgrades is usually the prio that you should be going for in the game. I'll give you guys examples. If you have, I'm gonna just use an example of English because there's the most English players. If you have 10 spearmen, 10 spear, 8 men-at-arm, and 20 longbow. So let's say you enter castle and these are your units. So which upgrades do you get first? Well, obviously you're gonna get longbow first, right? Because you have the most longbows, your army would get the biggest damage increase. So what would be your second upgrade? Now that is where it gets complicated because these two unit counts are very similar, right? So what does this depend on? It depends on what the opponent is making. So if the opponent is French and they're making mass knights, the second upgrade I would get is spearmen. So that, because I am going to be producing spearmen whole game because I'm playing against French and they have French knights. If I'm playing against perhaps Abbasid or Delhi or something, maybe I'm going to skip spearmen upgrade and I'm just going to focus, I'm going to get men-at-arm upgrade and keep producing men-at-arms instead. So the first upgrade that you want to get, assuming you have limited resources, you always want to get whichever one you have the most units currently, especially if you're pushing or you're getting pushed. You want to get that immediate value. So let's say that I don't plan to continue making longbows. Let's say that I have 28, 10. If I don't plan to continue making longbows at all for some reason, I would still get this upgrade first because you get the most immediate value. After that, you can get whatever you will either continue making or whatever will give you the most value second. So for example, if I had 1 man-at-arm, 15 spears, and 20 longbow, even if I'm not going to make longbows or spears, my plan is to go full dent only man-at-arms, I will still get longbow upgrade and spearman upgrade first because that will give me the most value. And then later you can get men-at-arms and start producing men-at-arms. Obviously, if you have resources, by the way, just, get them at the same time. I'm talking if you're like maybe, starving for resources and you can get, like, obvious answer is if you have resources, you get everything, right? But if you don't have resources, this is why you need to know when and how to prioritize stuff. Now, if my unit count is, let's say, I'm just going to give you guys an examples because I can't give you like, yeah, when you age up to castle, you always get this and then that. It depends like what you have. So let's say your unit count is this 5 men-at-arm, and let's say you're not playing against a knight civ or a horseman civ or whatever. Let's say I enter castle and these are my units. What would I get first? Obviously, again, longbow, but this time I wouldn't get maybe men-at-arm upgrade. Instead, I would take balanced projectiles because my army is fully longbow and it's clearly getting carried by the longbow at this point. So I might as well get balanced projectiles and veteran longbow upgrade at the same time. So once those finish, I will have more breathing room to get man-at-arm upgrade and then transition into more men-at-arms. Now this works on whichever way. Let me give you guys another example. Let's say I have 25 horsemen and I have 40 archers. Right, and let's say I'm playing versus 15 spears and opponent has 50 longbows. So let's say I'm Abbasid, right here. This is Abbasid. I reach castle, English has this army, I have this army. What would I get first? Let's say I don't have resources for everything. What would I get first? The first upgrade I would get is the archer upgrade, the veteran upgrade, again, because that would give me the most damage, the most health, the most everything. But the second upgrade, I would maybe skip the horseman, right? I mean, preferably you would get, with this amount of horsemen, you would get horsemen actually. But another important upgrade would be wedge rivets, which gives you +1 ranged armor because opponent's army is almost fully longbow. Which this might even take priority over any of the military upgrades because if you're facing a full like longbow army, you just need to defend against it, whatever is needed. Yeah, you wouldn't get like composite bows. Composite bows for Abbasid is like pure DPS upgrade. You have 40 archers versus 15 spears. The only thing you need is to not die to longbows. You don't need more damage to kill 15 spears. The 40 archers are gonna like destroy 15 spears immediately, right? So you don't, in this situation, even though you have 40 archers, you don't need to get balanced projectiles first. The first thing you want to get is the veteran upgrade, then veteran upgrade for horsemen, then wedge rivets, and then you can get balanced projectiles or what's it called? Composite bows, right? So it's all about prioritizing what you need in that moment. And like I said, it's hard to give you guys an example for every single thing, but I'll do another one. Last but not least, let's do French versus HRE. So let's say you have 20 knights, 35, let's say 45 archers versus, I don't know, HRE has 40 spearmen and 30 horsemen. Okay, let's say this is the, or maybe 25 is more realistic, I don't know. Let's say this is a situation, you're French versus HRE, you just hit castle. What do you get first? You get veteran archers upgrade, you do get veteran knight upgrade, but the first upgrade you will go for is balanced projectiles, because castle archers actually will do really well against feudal units. Castle archers will even do well against feudal knights, because feudal knights don't have as much armor, so they will do quite a lot of damage. So even though you're French and you're supposed to go all on knights, balanced projectiles would be very, very, very important upgrade here, so that your archers will do more damage, and then you can get +2 melee armor or +2 wedge rivets to dive under DCs, yada yada, and so on and so forth. This is why I'm going in detail to explain you guys this and to give you examples, because it's not as simple as, oh, get this usually, or get this first and that's it. In general, if you need a rule of thumb, if this is maybe too complicated and you don't quite get it or whatever, in general, get unit upgrades first to veteran, whether you're aging up from feudal to castle or castle to imperial. You need to get the unit upgrades first of the unit you have the most. Second, you get either the unit that you have the most of and you will continue producing it, or get the unit that you plan to transition to. Then you will get the blacksmith upgrades right after. Whether you get +1 damage or +1 armor depends what you have and what your opponent has. If you have 10 archers and opponent has 40, obviously getting +1 ranged armor first is better, because you will reduce the damage of 40 units, while getting +1 ranged damage would only give damage to 10 of your units. It's simple math. Alright, next one. University upgrades. And then we're going to go into some specifics. So, university upgrades. So you have chemistry, siege works, biology, incendiary arrows, court architects, and elite army tactics. You guys can't, I mean, you guys know what the upgrades are. I can see the chat is there, but whatever. It is what it is. Court architects is one of the last ones you will get, unless you are holding sacred sites and you need to, like, you have keeps and you have towers and you will hold sacred sites. You can get court architects immediately, because that's what the game, that's where the game is at. Siege works, you only really want to get like once you got either a shit ton of siege already, like if you have 10 plus siege, you can get this, but you probably would not rush it. You do want to get it eventually, because it makes your rams really, really strong and every other siege, but it's not something you rush. Chemistry, same thing, increases the damage of gunpowder units. It's really, really good upgrade, but the only time you want to get this upgrade is like if you're fighting on water in Imperial and you have a lot of gunpowder ships, or if you have bombards, or if you have like culverins, or if you have a lot of hand cannoneers. But the moment you hit castle, you're not going to have hand cannoneers, so you kind of want to get this one a little bit later, even though it's a very, very strong upgrade. Which leaves us with 3 biology, incendiary arrows, and elite army tactics. And these are very simple. It kind of goes like the previous one. Do you have a lot of horses? Do you have 50 knights? Well, getting biology would be pretty fucking good. If you're French and you got mass archer and knights, you should get biology first, right? And then you get incendiary arrows. Or if you have way more archers than you have knights, you can get incendiary arrows first, and then you can get biology. If you're playing HRE, like one of the best, I mean not one, but the best upgrade in the game, you can get is Elite Army Tactics, because it gives 20% healthier units and their damage gets increased by 20%. Now, you don't want to be like the moment you hit Imperial, you throw down University and get this, because University is 450 wood, and this upgrade costs 300 food and 700 gold, and it takes a minute and a half to research. So again, if you have the resources, obviously get the upgrades. You don't need to think. That's it. You just get the upgrades. But if you're starving for resources and you have to prioritize, you need to get the upgrades that upgrade the units from Castle to Imperial first. You know, get +1 range armor, range attack, whatever, and then get Elite Army Tactics or Biology or Incendiary arrows after. Now, if you are, again, playing English and you got like 80 longbows and you got like 10 melee units, well, maybe you should consider rushing University and getting Incendiary arrows in those like extreme situations. Or if you're like HRE and you got 90 men-at-arms, then yeah, somewhat rushing Elite Army Tactics would give you great value, right? But in general, these upgrades are really expensive, but they're also really, really good. Now, that's the longest part of the video. Let's go through some specifics and some questions from the chat earlier. Let me actually cover this one. Military Academy, when to get it. So this is still kind of debatable a little bit. I personally, like, it's a good upgrade and increases the production speed of your infantry, cavalry, siege, and transport units and buildings by 33% for only 350 resources. Now, I'd like to get this with HRE somewhat quickly, and you get this with Malians somewhat quickly. Why? Well, you have a lot of gold excess with both of those civs, so you can get it. But some civs struggle pretty bad with gold, and even though this is only 350 resources, 250 of that is gold. So if you have like 5 production buildings and you get Military Academy, technically it would be worth, or I think it's 6 actually. I don't know the exact number, but let's say it's 6 or 7, doesn't matter. Even though efficiency wise it does pay off, sometimes you just don't have the gold for it, and you would rather, especially if you hit Castle, there's so many more things you would rather get. You would rather get veterancy upgrade, you would rather get blacksmith upgrades that are like these ones we talked about earlier. So this is not something you're gonna like age up and be like, yo, I gotta get that, but you do want to get it eventually. My general rule of thumb is after I have 8 production buildings and after I got veterancy upgrades, after I got the blacksmith upgrades I need, then I go for Military Academy, assuming I have enough gold. And obviously I'm talking specifically military upgrades. There's also economy upgrades. So this is, again, it's not an upgrade that you rush. This upgrade is really good with Farimba, with Malian, because Farimba is obviously the landmark that produces 5 units at a time, and Military Academy does reduce production time for Farimba. So it's very, very good for that specifically. In what situation do you prioritize military upgrades over eco upgrades? So the simple answer is in Castle and Imperial, you do want to prioritize military upgrades over eco upgrades. Again, this is, you know, generalizing it, but most of the time as you age up to Castle or Imperial, you're either defending or attacking at around that time, and getting the military upgrades will, you know, prevent you unnecessarily losing the games because you were too greedy. So you do want to get military upgrades first and then get eco upgrades. But in Feudal, it's the opposite. So why is the opposite? Well, in Castle and Imperial, when you're getting these upgrades, you have 20, 30, 40, 50 units, and then you're putting upgrades on them. In Feudal Age, you don't want to make 3 longbows and get Steeled Arrow, you know, because it's 175 resources. You might as well get 3 more longbows, right? And if you now have 6 longbows, should you get Steeled Arrow? Well, no, you should get 3 more longbows. So what does that mean? Well, the upgrades are not that great until you have about 15 units. Or when I say not that great, upgrades are always great, but you will not get as much value from upgrades until you have about 12 to 15 units. If you're doing attack damage like Steeled Arrow, obviously Iron Undermash If opponent has like 6, 7, 8 archers, it's already worth it. But you usually want to get economic upgrades first in Feudal, and I covered economic upgrades in one of the previous videos, when to get eco upgrades in AoE4. So usually once you get eco upgrades, it will allow you to produce more units. Once you're able to produce more units, you get military upgrades. Simple. When to prioritize military upgrades over more units. Now in Feudal, like I just mentioned, you always want to constantly be producing units, because you need bigger and bigger numbers in order to be able to fight your opponent. And then, you know, as your income grows, you will slowly add military upgrades to it. You don't want to like get to Feudal, make 3 archers and make Blacksmith for upgrades. You want to keep making units. Now in Castle, if you don't have enough resources, you just aged up and you're producing like 2 knights, and you want to get archer upgrade and you want to get knight upgrade, cancel the 2 knights and get the upgrades first. It's very, very important to get upgrades first, assuming you have standing military. Now, someone asked me earlier, how many units do I need to get the upgrades? Like, do I need to have 5 units in order to get upgrades? Do I need to have 6 or 7 or whatever? That depends. That's very specific. Usually what I told you guys earlier, that's how it goes. But if your opponent is not attacking you and you got 0 men-at-arms, you can get men-at-arm upgrade first, right? There's no urgency for you to get men-at-arms. You're not dying. But it's like if you're getting all in and the opponent is making rams and stuff, then you should probably make units first. And you should probably, you know, make units that already have upgrades. Like once you reach the castle, making men-at-arms like Gulams or Delhi men-at-arms or Delhi knights, because those units do not need Feudal to Castle upgrades, right? So you want to get instant value and not waste your time upgrading units if you got no units at all, right? But if your opponent is not attacking you, you're not in a hurry, then just get military upgrades first or make units. Honestly, doesn't matter. Next one. This is, I mean, it's kind of military upgrade-ish thing, kind of. And that is when to get Network of Citadels. We're going to go into Civ specifics. When to get Network of Citadels. Well, it costs 500 resources, it costs gold and stone, but this is one of the best upgrades you can get for English. Network of Castles attack speed is increased from 20 to 40%, which is crazy, crazy good. And this is something that I see lower league players continuously skip on until way later. But at a top level play, the moment you have a keep or if you have white towers, your landmark, this is one of the first upgrades you will get. Now, you're not going to get it over the veteran upgrades for units, but you do want to get this because you get 20% attack speed on all your units within the influence of Network of Castles / Citadels. So it's very, 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 very good upgrade. Now, since we're on English, I'll just mention this. When to get Armour Chat upgrade. Obviously, you want to make veteran upgrade first, and I would say you need at least like 6 to 10 men-at-arms before you get Armor Clad upgrade, because if you're increasing +2 armor on 1 men-at-arm for 500 resources, you know, that doesn't really pay off. You might as well have 5 more men-at-arms, right? So think of it that way, right? Do I want to spend 500 resources to give 1 man-at-arm 2 armor? Or do I want to make 5 more men-at-arms or 4 more men-at-arms, whatever, for that cost? And when you think about stuff like that, it kind of paints the picture a little bit. Now, when to get, let's talk about French. I'm not going to go through every single civilization and every single specific, but if you are going with Royal Institute, when do you get Royal Bloodlines? So, this is the Age 3 landmark. Royal Institute that allows you to get Imperial University upgrades in here. So when do you get Royal Bloodlines? Well, if you have resources and you have a lot of knights, the first thing you want to get is Royal Bloodlines, and then you want to get Veteran Royal Knight upgrade, because Veteran Royal Knight upgrade, I think it takes 45 seconds or 60 seconds to research, but Royal Bloodlines takes 1 minute and 30. And it gives you 35% health, which is really high. So if you have enough resources, you want to get Royal Bloodlines first, then you get Veteran upgrade. So they are kind of kicking in at the same time. If you do it the other way around, then your veteran royal upgrade will finish much quicker than royal bloodlines, and then you might need to wait too long. While we're in French, question I got earlier, when do I get chivalry? Obviously this upgrade got nerfed. It costs 300 resources now, which is a lot. I personally like to get at least like 5-6 knights before I get chivalry, because if you get like 2 knights and then chivalry, again, you should look at the cost. It's 300 resources. I would rather have another knight and a little bit extra than have this, because you shouldn't be running your knights into the enemy and losing all the HP immediately, right? Because that's kind of bad. You want to keep them alive and keep them going. But usually I like to, like I said, make 5-6 knights and get this. Sometimes if you maybe dent in too hard and then you have like first 4 knights you made are all like 20 health or 10 health, then you can get this a bit earlier to heal them up. But if your units are still healthy and you didn't lose any health, then you might as well just skip chivalry until later on, until you have 10, 15, 20 knights. So, yeah. When to get greaseled axes for your siege. Now, this is for every civ. This is not for... Oh, greased axles. Close enough. When to get this upgrade? Well, I personally... like at lower levels, I generally don't think this matters too much, because people will usually not be kiting your mangonels or your springles too well. They're just gonna sit there and you're just gonna bang them. So I would say probably skip this if you're lower league until you have resources. Just get it eventually for all your siege. If you're maybe a little bit higher level, like Conqueror, having this on even 1 or 2 mangonels can help a lot close the distance between the mangonel and the archers, especially if your opponent is microing well and kiting, to get that mangonel shot off. Same thing if the opponent has a mangonel and you have springles, having 50% movement speed on springles will allow you to actually shoot at the mangonel and not have the mangonel just run away and, you know, herp a derp. Let's talk about the other siege upgrades. If you have springles in Imperial, you want to get roller shutter traders almost immediately, because range on springles is what wins the siege fights. Increases the attack speed of mangonels. This is something that you want to get one of the last upgrades. It's good, but you would need like 4 or 5 plus mangonels for this upgrade to be really good, instead of just getting another mangonel, like I mentioned previously. Geometry, this upgrade is pretty crap. A lot of people don't know, but this upgrade actually only increases the damage done by Trebuchet's basic attack. So what I mean by that is, I don't know the exact numbers, but Trebuchet has like, let's say 20 damage if it hits anything, and then it has 500 bonus against buildings. So when you get geometry, it only increases the damage on the basic damage. So it's only going to increase the 20 damage, not the 500 one. I don't know if this is changed at any point, but I'm pretty sure this is exactly how it works still. So this upgrade sucks pretty hard. And you usually want to get it if you're like, well, I got everything else, I might as well get this too. Pretty bad upgrade. And then you have lightweight beams, which is probably one of the best upgrades in the game. It makes your rams broken, so if you're planning to make rams, make sure to get this, because they're broken as hell. Next one. When to get maces with Holy Roman Empire. So again, I explained the veteran upgrades and all that. Even if the units have unique upgrades like heavy maces, you want to get veteran upgrade first. When to get heavy maces? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. Do you have men-at-arms? Do you have at least 8 to 10 men-at-arms, and you want to continue making men-at-arms? And you're playing against enemy men-at-arms or knights, then get heavy maces, because it increases your damage against heavy targets. But make sure you have at least 8 to 10 units, because it's a pretty expensive upgrade. When do you get two-handed weapons? Well, this is a +2 damage increase, so I would say if I'm HRE and I'm massing melee units, like horsemen, men-at-arms, this is not something you want to rush, because I would rather get, if I'm making horsemen, men-at-arms, I would rather get this, or this and then plus this, because these two increase the damage on all your units, including spearmen, including horsemen, including knights. This just increases the damage on your man-at-arms. So, yeah, think about it that way. But if you're making purely man-at-arms and you got these already, then get two-handed weapons. If you watch my stream, you see me skip these ones pretty often until later on. It's also a pretty expensive upgrade, so it's not something that should be prioritized. Alright, when to get booty camp? Beast, it's not booty camp, it's boot camp. Thank you, Joe. Boot camp is an upgrade that increases the health of all your infantry 15%. Obviously, it's a very good upgrade. When do you get it? In Feudal Age? Well, if you are in Castle or Imperial, and you aged up to Castle or Imperial with military upgrade, get it immediately, right? Immediately. If you're opening with military wing in Feudal, it's probably one of the last upgrades you will get. You would rather get +1 range armor, +1 ranged attack, eco upgrades, and then get this, okay? Because you would much rather have armor over health, and you would much rather ranged armor specifically, and you would much rather have +1 range attack over extra health on your units. Even if you're going like horseman archer, this is still a very, very good upgrade. When to get camel support? I mean, if you're in Imperial and you have a lot of resources, this is a very good upgrade because camels give your infantry, there we go, infantry +2 armor. But I would say this is not an upgrade you rush. Like, you probably want to get this after all the blacksmith stuff that I talked about, after the Castle to Imperial elite upgrades, and after university upgrades. Like, I would not rush this over any of those. Like, it's good, it's not that good. For 1,000 resources +2 armor, pretty cool, but like elite army tactics or biology or whatever is a lot better. Alright, next one is when to get poison arrow with Malians. Right here. When to get poison arrow with Malians, and when to get sofa upgrades. So let's do poison arrow first. Poison arrow, in order for the cost to pay off, I would say you need at least like 25 minimum, like bare minimum. That's assuming you're floating resources. Again, all these upgrades, I want to mention again, all these upgrades, if I said get them after 10 units, if you're floating resources, if you got 2-minute resources, just get the upgrades. Poison arrows is only, in my opinion, worth after 25-30 archers, because it's extremely expensive, especially for Malian, because their economy is not the greatest, right? In general, you want to prioritize units first. There's especially if you're going for Rimba, you would rather use golden unit production than this, but you do want to get it if your army comp is heavily on archers. When to get sofa upgrades? Now, sofa upgrades meaning imported armor. Obviously, the veteran sofa upgrade, we already talked about this. Imported armor is very good. Now, why is it very good? Because unlike the Imperial Camel upgrade, or unlike the Blacksmith upgrades, that you get +1 ranged armor, this costs 500 resources. Where is it? Where's the Blacksmith? So if you were to get +1 ranged armor, it's 350 resources, right? This is 500 resources, but it doesn't give you +1 ranged armor. It gives you +2 melee and +2 ranged armor. So you get 4 armor for the cost of 500. That's a good fucking deal right there. That's a good deal right there. And if you're playing Malian, there's a good chance that you're using sofas to raid, or you're going sofa archer or sofa javelin. So sofa are your tanking units. So getting armor on them is very good, very important, and you get a lot of value from them. Same with armor clad upgrade, by the way, for man-at-arms from English. You don't get +2 armor range, you get +2 melee armor and +2 ranged armor. So that's something you need to know. So very good upgrade, but again, I would prioritize, if you're heavy on the archers, I would prioritize veteran archer upgrade, veteran sofa upgrade. Then I would probably get +1 ranged attack for all your archers. Then I would get this, and so on and so forth. You could also get poison arrow over this, right? It depends. If you got 2 sofas and you got 40 archers, obviously you get poison arrow first. If you got 15 sofas and 30 archers, you can consider getting this first, because it makes them a lot tankier. Next one is going to be Mongol upgrades. Actually, let's discuss this one. When to get this one, by the way, nothing you prioritize the movement speed and infantry, but you do want to get it, but nothing to rush. Now, Malians don't have this. I'm going to have to go to another civ. Let's go Mongols, and let's go this upgrade. Someone asked me, when do you get sight radius of scouts increased in Imperial? I only get this with like heavy cavalry civs, like maybe, you know, Mongols or maybe French, just to get that extra radius while raiding. And definitely get this when you're playing Malian, because you do make scouts even in Imperial with Malian. Now, if I'm playing English and I'm, you know, mass men-at-arms, spearman, longbow, hand cannoneer, probably just gonna skip this, right? I'm probably gonna use towers. So if you're playing very cavalry based, sure, get it and add a scout. It's gonna help you a lot in raiding. If you're very infantry based or whatever, you can skip it. So last thing to talk about is Mongol Ubu upgrades and improved upgrades for military. So Mongol Ubu upgrades. So we're going to talk about whistling arrows, raid bounty or raid bounty, additional torches, stone bounty, and obviously I discussed this already. So whistling arrow is one of the best upgrades in my opinion in the game, and I feel like it's still underused. So Khan arrow, if I am not mistaken, and I might be, lasts 2 seconds. So Khan has an arrow that increases ranged attack speed by 50% for 2 seconds. If you get this upgrade, increases the Khan signal arrow duration by 5 seconds. So it goes from 2 seconds for 50% attack speed to 7 seconds. The range style doesn't really matter too much. Like the radius of the arrow itself is pretty long. But that's a massive fucking damage increase. It's insane. I've started getting this upgrade in Feudal Age after I get all the other Eco and Blacksmith upgrades. It's very good. It's very underrated. It's very underrated. And then the improved one, I think, increases it by, I don't know what amount actually. I think it's 4 tiles, but I'm not sure what the duration is. Someone might know in the chat, because I can't see here improved versions. Now, raid bounty and stone bounty. Now, if you could choose, you get stone one first if you're Imperial, because stone is very hard to get by and you can get a lot of cool stuff with stone. So stone bounty over raid bounty. When do you get these? Well, when you're, you know, simple answers, when you're destroying enemies' buildings or when you're doing raids in the late game. They're very good upgrades, but again, they're not upgrades you want to rush until you get to Imperial onwards, after you got all your Imperial stuff. And then additional torches, when do you get these? Super late game, once again, once you are like making a lot of horsemen or Keshaks or whatever, and you're raiding and you're trying to burn buildings, burn walls. It's a super expensive upgrade. It's nothing to, even though it's available in Castle, you do not want to get it anytime soon. Whistling arrows though, very good, very good. And then Mongol improved upgrades. So I can show you here, but I don't know why, actually. I never realized that they're not here. But Mongol has improved upgrades for military. So not for blacksmith upgrades. Mongol does not have improved blacksmith upgrades for these. But you have improved upgrade for siege engineering. You have improved upgrade for military academy, biology, siege works, and elite army tactics, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it gives like, is it 10 extra HP in your cavalry? And is it 10 extra health? I think. I'm not actually sure on the number. Yeah, it's 30%. Okay, yeah. So obviously, if you can get your cavalry from, you know, 20% bonus HP to 30%, that is very, very good. But also, if I'm not mistaken, it costs 1,000 stone. So when do you get these upgrades? Well, you're not gonna get them anytime soon, I can tell you that. You usually want to prioritize getting bomber towers to make sure you secure the map and stuff like that. And if you have the trade going, the trade can also give you stone, and then you can get all these upgrades later on. Again, if you're heavy cavalry, go for improved biology with one of the first improved stone upgrades, because it's just 10% health on your cavalry, which is quite a lot. And you know, then you can get some of the other improved military upgrades like siege works or elite army tactics if you have a lot of infantry. Military Academy also has an improved version, but I would probably not get it until like one of the last things. Now, improved siege engineering in castle allows you to make mangonels and springles on the field. This is not like you get it or you don't. It depends on if you want to push with siege. If you have a lot of infantry and you want to make some siege on the field, get improved siege engineering. If you don't want, then don't get it. Simple as that. Yeah, also military academy, like, yeah, that's a good point. In the late game, you have so much production that the military production speed is not really that important because you have so much production, the units pop out immediately. That's it. I think I've covered everything, or pretty much everything, but I hope you guys kind of not only learned which upgrades are good, but how to prioritize upgrades on your own. Again, after watching this video, try to watch some streams and then see like what I just talked about and try to pay attention. Like, oh, I can see he's, you know, this player is prioritizing these upgrades over these upgrades, and you'll kind of get the hang of it based on, like I said, what you're building, what your opponent is building. You'll figure it out. If you're watching this on YouTube, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Check me out on Twitch. I'm probably live right now, getting some upgrades. Make sure to subscribe. We're almost at 100,000 subs. Thank you for watching, YouTube gamers, Twitch gamers. Let's keep going.